You are on the. Okay. Today we have here Olivia, Dana, and Santino, the three of us, and we're going to be talking about the movie Minari, which is very acclaimed for being the new American movie.
Yeah.
In the language is in Korean, but there's there's also a lot of controversy over whether it should be sorted as an American movie or a Korean movie, and we're gonna be talking about that as well. So Dana prepared a bunch of questions for her to ask and for us to answer all together. So let's get started.
But first want to address the thing that Olivia talked about. If the movie should be categorized as an American movie or a Korean movie. What do you guys think about?
I think definitely American. I
Me too.
I feel like Minari is a movie that captures the American dream, and all the characters in Minari are actually, most of them are American, actually.
Yeah, right.
Because think about the parents, the kids, they're all American. They're immigrants, and in the case of our main character, the little boy and his sister, they're completely American. They're not even immigrants, and only the grandmother is in the movie is fully actually Korean. And it's really nice looking at the relationship that she forms with her youngest grandson. David. I forget all their names. I'm just gonna talk about I'm probably gonna talk about the dad as Steven Yeun, because that's all I can think about when I look at him.
I also think it's an American movie because, like you said, it perfectly represents the American dream. You know, in the past, when people wanted to make their own farm or start new, they always went around the country in their trailer homes trying to find a land that was fertile, land worthy for agriculture and stuff. So I think the movie perfectly captures the American ideal. And also, how about you, Santino?
I believe I have a kind of a different sorry,
It's okay.
He just
breathe. It's okay.
I have a kind of a different perspective from both of you. I actually do not think Minari is a Korean film nor an American film.
Oh wow.
I believe
That's new.
this movie is for all immigrants, Asian or another country. This movie is for all immigrants in the United States, because it's not just the Korean immigrants' story. It's not just an American's story. It's all about those foreign immigrants and their problems inside America or the other countries. And I believe this movie showed those problems and those stuff very very touching.
Yeah, that was a really new take. And I think I can relate to that. As a person who has lived in the U.S. as a foreigner. So I lived in the U.S. for about 9 years. This comes up almost every episode, but it's a huge part of me. And I wasn't actually an immigrant because I didn't have an American citizenship or anything, but I had to attend public school and everything, and go through a lot of things that an immigrant might have to go through in their life. But I was lucky enough to live in an area that had a lot of diversity, so I didn't directly experience the things that our main characters had to go through, discrimination, racism, all that kind of stuff. But I was there to see it happen to a lot of people around me. For example, my parents, my friends, older siblings, people like that. A lot of it is not as, a lot of it is very subtle, the racism that people go through. People are, I guess, educated enough to know that racism is something that should not happen, so they tend to be very, very subtle about it. For example, we can see what people actually think in the scene where David and his sister meets the white kids at church. Right. The kids are very more straightforward with their, with the views that they have towards toward David's family. They're like, oh, why do you look like that? You know.
Why is your face flat?
Yeah, why is your face so flat? But
That's so rude.
it's
though.
very, very rude. But it's probably also what the adults are thinking. It's probably, but the adults know better than to, you know, say it out loud. But the kids represent what's really going on inside these people's minds. And I feel like that's what we need to change: the people's mindsets and the the way of thinking that they have. Like, why are they here? Why do they look different from us? Things like that.
I mean, one thing I noticed about the movie is that even though it has some discrimination, like I talked about, like the characters, the white guys, kids saying like, "Why is your face flat?" and stuff, but still, it didn't have a lot of discrimination. So I think that was actually better for the like the plot for the plot of the movie, because I think the movie like centered on more on the American dream and immigrants, not really like really corely focused on like core discrimination and stuff. So I think that was better. And in a way, microaggression is more widely spread in the US, right? You know, there are like hate crimes and stuff, but in everyday life, Asian Americans go through microaggressions more. So I think the fact that the what's the director's name? Isaac?
I don't remember.
Isaac Chung, I think. Yeah. So I think it was better for the director to kind of coordinate the discrimination situation that way.
I believe so too, because discrimination is a very widely known like kind of a motif inside immigrant-based like movies, books, etc. So I think this is a very unique movie to not put many like racism, should you call it racism, but like a somewhat mild racism in the movie, and like emphasizing those bonds between families and the other like other like problems or like distresses that Asian immigrants have. So yeah, I believe so too, Dana.
And another question that we wanted to talk about is what does David's heart disease represent? So David's heart disease was about having a hole in his heart. And like the way I interpreted it, at first his hole is really big before he met his grandma, and his identity was not really based on Korean culture. He was more of an American kid. But as the movie went on, he became friends with his grandma. He planted Minaris together on a garden, and then he slowly recovered from his injury. So I think like this hole in his heart represents like the missing Korean soul in him.
I felt that the whole mending in David's heart was about acceptance. Because David, I remember very distinctly the beginning of the movie is like, why are you not like other grandmas? Other grandmas, you know, bake cookies and things like that. Why?
Grandma smells like Korea.
Yeah, grandma smells like Korea. And in the beginning, he hates her for it. He tries to, he tries to resist and turn away from his ethnicity because it makes him different from everyone. Because at school, it's what makes him look different. It's what makes him be different from all his friends and peers. And as the movie progresses, he comes to love his grandmother and the smell of Korea that comes with her. And I feel like the whole is like something that we all have, that when we can't accept a part of ourselves, being Korean will always be a part of David. That's something that he can't change because, you know, he was born with it. But if he goes to never accept that fact, he'll always have a hole in his heart. But once he grows to accept that part of him, it's what makes him whole, and it's what makes him, be able to accept himself as a person. And I think this is something that a lot of immigrants may also experience. Like, I was, I'm kind of, embarrassed to say it, but I also thought like this for a while when I was little. It's like, why can't my family be like all the other families? Why couldn't I have experienced the cultures that everyone at school relates to? Why couldn't I grow up with Britney Spears? Why couldn't I grow up with, the American cultures, because I grew up in Korea and I grew up with, Psy. I grew up with the Korean artist Kim Kwang-seok,
Yeah, I
these
know.
singers and things like that, that only Korean parents can, pass down to their kids. And when I was a kid, I was like, I did not like that because it made me different from everyone else. But I think I also had that period of time where I grew to accept that Korean part of me because I am Korean in the end, and it's not gonna do me any good resisting from it.
You mentioned all the points I wanted to mention. So okay, so um, the most important part I want to like emphasize in this movie, and the part where I really enjoyed the most was the fire in the storage thingy.
Oh.
Um, I think the scene is quite ironic because it's a tragic situation, right? Because Jacobs is all hardworking, vegetables and greens are all burned down to the ground. But I think it is very ironic that the fire in the storage room actually brought their families together. Like Monica and Jacob and
They were on the verge of a verge of a divorce.
they're going to have a divorce, but after like
The fire incident.
going through the fire and all stuff, they got along together, and the grandchildren and the Korean grandmother herself, and they got together too. So I think that's a very ironic and very interesting part of the movie.
I feel like that also represents, I this is a thought that I just had, so it might be complete nonsense, and I haven't watched the movie in ages, but
That's what the podcast is.
yeah. But I also just thought that that scene might represent the Korean part of this movie, because South Korea, the Koreas both, we Koreans have gone through so much throughout history, and something that has been that we are taught, and something that's I feel like within the culture is coming together after conflict, after hardships, after the Korean War, after all the hardships that Korean society has gone through. Going through the fight for democracy, everything, the fight against within ourselves, the fight against outside forces. Something that makes us Korean is how we bond together and how we how we stick with each other
Yeah,
to
we all have
overcome
the
these
mentality of
difficulties.
being
And I feel like this is like a beautiful reflection of both the American and Korean cultures, because getting up, brushing off the hardships and going forward is also representation of the American dream. So I feel like this incident just kind of defines the Yi family, who are the main characters of this film.
Yeah. Then guys, let's pick one scene in the movie that you guys like the most. I'll go first. My favorite scene was when David ran to stop his grandma from leaving Arkansas. Yeah, because of his heart disease, he can't run. He shouldn't run, but he ran to save his grandma, whom at first he hated the most. And I actually cried in that scene. Yeah, and that
how much
love he has for his grandma. Yeah, I love that scene. And then Santino.
I really like the scene where they play like what should I call it? Hwatu? Korean Korean card game together because of my personal experience with my grandmother. Actually, my grandmother actually taught me how to play Hwatu when I was like really little, like 8 or 9 years old, and you.
Yeah, you should not learn how to play.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like a. It's definitely like poker in Korea. It is a very popular method of gambling in Korea, and I should not be, definitely not be learning those Hwatu in that age. But I felt that the kind of bondship which David felt his grandma while he was playing Hwatu with his grandma, and bring back some memories from my my
I mean, it's not
my
ethically
youth.
correct, but yeah, it's definitely
But it
memories.
was a very very good time with my grandmother. So I
Wow.
really like this scene because I experienced those things with my grandmother. So I thought it was a very iconic scene for me.
I feel like one of my favorite scenes, like Data's scene was actually my favorite, but no, but I actually do have another one. It's where the what do we call it? Like the person who finds the wells. Yeah, the water diviner.
Oh yeah.
I liked
Paul?
yeah, Paul. I liked the scene where in the end of like this is actually tasty, but in the beginning of the movie, the water diviner fails to find water.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, we should put this up to science, and we should do this the Korean way." And then they fail, and they fail to find water. But at the end, the water diviner manages to find a well for the family, and they get water. And I feel like that's a really great representation of how the two cultures actually came to come together. How the parents actually were they were more reluctant to do things the American way because they're Korean at root and they're like, Korean stuff is better and whatnot. But in the end, they find that both cultures have things that are worthy, and it comes together to create prosperity and the bonding of the family and a happy ending.
I love your interpretation of that scene. You're the best, Olivia. So, the last question we're going to deal with is what does Minari represent? So to give some background info, Minari is a Korean plant, 나물. So, it's Korean greens called Minari.
Let's explain what namu is.
Yeah.
So namu is like plants that are edible plants that Korean people eat normally for banchan, which is like side dishes. Korean side dish. If you go to a Korean restaurant, they'll probably like put out kimchi, 콩나물, like things like that, like bean sprouts, and just have a whole table full of banchan. And namu is what makes up the banchan. And yeah, so that's just a short explanation on minari.
And who wants to go first? What does Minari represent? Me? Santino? Okay, let's go.
Have you guys actually tasted Minari before?
Yeah, I love minari.
I too love Minari very much, and I think the significance or representation of Minari in this movie is relating to for is like kind of I don't like the expression spice, but what should I say for like unique 향기 or smell or it has a unique like taste.
It has a really, really unique. It's like, it's once you have a taste of Minari, it'll be like, okay, this is Minari. You'll never forget it because it has a really, really unique taste and smell. It's really distinct.
So Minari is Minari is very like I believe it kind of represents all herbs or greens in Korea because it has a very unique taste, and when I taste Minari, I actually feel I'm at a countryside in Korea where I actually came from, like because I was from Gangwon-do. I grew up in the mountains, so I had that Korean namu or greens all of my life. So I guess Minari is kind of represents like your bondage to Korea or like Minari has a very modest and very plain taste for maybe for other foreigners, but Minari brings memories of home for Koreans. So I believe that's kind of a representation in Minari. And as the as in the movies, Minari grows anywhere and quite anywhere, and it doesn't need a lot of extra things for it to grow. So yes, I believe it does represent the immigrants, Korean immigrants from in the 1970s or 80s. Yeah.
I feel like Minari represents the Korean heritage in this case, and in a larger point of view, the traditional ethnicity of these people. The reason I say this is because Minari as a plant is actually not native to North America. It's only in East Asia and apparently in certain parts of Australia. I just looked this up. Um, so turning away the the worry is that Minari might be an invasive plant, and they might have just done something really bad for the environment. But turning away from those worries, I feel like Minari is not native to North America, as is Stephen Yun and David's family. I shouldn't call him Stephen Yun. I should call him, like, what's his name? I don't know. I don't remember. But as the main character's family, they're not native to this land. But Minari grows everywhere. Koreans grow everywhere. I feel like this relationship shows how resilient these people are and how they grow to live on this land and adjust to their surroundings, become a part of the environment, as Minari does, and as all immigrants and Korean Americans do. And I feel like Minari is a really great representation. But although it might be an invasive plant, someone please, look that up. Is Minari an invasive plant? Did the lovely grandma just make a huge mistake and plant it? Yeah. Dana's looking it up right now. Is it?
Minari an
Please don't
invasive
be. We don't want to be invasive. Oh my god, it is! My god! Okay, according to www.latimes.com, is Minari invasive? Out of the water, Minari is easy to propagate. It spreads fast, so fast that it should be contained and grown by itself, lest it becomes invasive. Shit.
Imagine if there's a really big forest of Minaris in Arkansas, and there is so much Minari for it to control.
It's invasive. My god. It's okay. It's okay.
Too bad.
Oh my god.
I mean, okay. That was a ride. I think Santino and Olivia already told you guys much about Korean heritage and how Minari represents it, but I also want to add more about the grandma in the movie. I think Minari also represents grandma because after grandma passes away, there's like a flood or like a field of Minaris in a secluded place in the riverbanks, and it's like very beautiful and it kind of shows that the grandma's heritage or the Koreanness that she brought with her will always be intrinsic in David's or the Yi family's household. So I think Minari represents those, like what all you guys talked about. So thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope it was really insightful though. I think Olivia and Santino gave you guys a lot of great information.
Yes, Minari. In the when Dana first asked us to like watch Minari for the podcast, honestly, I thought, what is this like boring movie? And no, because the poster is so like mild, and I didn't really know much about the movie, so I'm very ashamed to admit that I thought Minari was, before watching the movie, I thought it would be very bland, but as I went through the movie, it actually very, very much reminded me of my grandmother, as well as I told you guys, because apart from Hatu, I too, like David, I did not hate my grandma like David used to do, but I was kind of feeling distance from her because I grew up in like Gangwon-do in my youth, and when I first moved to Seoul, I first lived with my grandmother in my mother's side, and she was very, very different from culture in Gangwon-do because she is from like Gyeongsang-do, and I have to experience many different spices and other like strange things my grandmother came up with. So I was kind of feeling distance with her, but after like I actually believe it was since from that Hwatu game I become very close to her, and I like opened my mind to her, and I felt I felt my youth I felt the similarity of my youth in Minari, so it was a very special movie to me. And how about you, Olivia?
Minari is, since its release, I was in the US at the time that I watched it. It's been a movie that's really that's always been that's. Oh my god, sorry, I can't talk right now. It's a movie really really close to my heart. Maybe because it shows how we live in the U.S. It expresses our emotions really really well. And it also, as a movie, was an important benchmark to, I feel like, Korean American history, because it was the first time it got a lot of awards. It made a lot of controversies. It made a huge impact in the world, and that really meant a lot to me. So if you guys have 2 hours on hand, watching Minari is, a really nice way to, use time. So I want to recommend this movie to all of you who are listening to this podcast. Thank you for watching or listening. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. What?